Yo, what's going on guys, it's Cynical and welcome back to another video. Today for you guys, we're going to be talking about some general Square Enix news. Some stuff that definitely most of you guys should know about, especially for the future of this company. Now, this information is coming out of Square Enix's recent financial report, talking about how the company have been performing over the past financial year. It contains a lot of interesting information. Some stuff that I know people are quite triggered over at the moment and are sort of looking at the company sideways to a degree in a couple of areas. First things first, let's talk about like the net sales of the company. They brought in 365 billion yen with a 51 billion yen profit, which is pretty good. Square Enix have mentioned that in regards to the HD games side of the company, so this is in regards to like the console games, there was a bit of a drop-off, 10% drop-off in comparison to the year before. When we look towards the year before, 2020, of course they ended up releasing games like the Final Fantasy XIV Remake as well as Marvel's Avengers. So the performance of last year in comparison is down a bit, but I suppose that makes sense if you look at the fact that they released games like Nier Replicant, Guardians of the Galaxy, as well as Outriders. Those games didn't perform nearly as well as their HD games from the year prior, so I think that was to be expected. But what is good news is in the MMO segment for the company, they saw a sharp spike, and I guess this is just another case of Yoshi P being the savior of the day. Yeah, there was a bit of an explosion with Final Fantasy XIV last year with the impending release of the next expansion, Endwalker, which a lot of people were of course highly anticipating, but on top of that, I guess the word to mouth of Final Fantasy really increased last year with a lot of people jumping over from World of Warcraft to Final Fantasy XIV, with a lot of really big and well-known streamers talking about the game and finally dipping their toes in, which caused a lot of new people to jump onto the Final Fantasy XIV boat. So Final Fantasy XIV is in a pretty good position. It's performing the best it ever has and just continues to increase in popularity. So looking at this, yeah, Final Fantasy XIV kind of saved the company last year. And I think it's also safe to say that in regards to their console games this year, sales will likely be down again unless Final Fantasy XVI ends up releasing this year for a November, sort of December release date. If we look towards what's been released this year, like Babylon's Fall has been a complete and utter disaster. Chocobo GP, I don't think sales will be all too great around there, and especially because that game has recently faced a lot of controversy since launch, with Square Enix basically putting a lot of their mobile game gacha practices into a console game, which is like really rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. The only thing that we really have on the horizon that will likely make Square Enix a bit of money is Forspoken, but then that is risky at the same time. It's not guaranteed that a lot of profits will be made there because it is a brand new IP, and we know how things go with Square Enix and brand new IPs. So again, I think that Final Fantasy XIV for this year will likely be the saving grace, unless of course we look at Final Fantasy XVI. However, the thing that's really pissing people off at this point is the mention of NFT and blockchain involvement with Square Enix. Square Enix last year made it apparent that the company wants to start involving themselves in blockchain entertainment, incorporating NFTs, non-fungible tokens, into entertainment, so into games going forward. This is due to how big, I guess, NFTs and specifically crypto became throughout last year and leading up to last year. Obviously, there's a lot of money to be made in that sector, and when there's an area that a company can tap into to make more income, they're going to harness that. Problem is though, NFTs and crypto are really frowned upon, specifically when looking towards the video game community here on the internet. This is for the main reason of that there are so many scams that go on within the NFT crypto space, and on top of that, how detrimental it can be to the environment. I know these are like the sort of cliche talking points about negativity towards the NFT crypto space, but it's a very real thing. At the start of this year, there was an apartment building over in New York that was literally freezing during the season of winter because someone in the apartment building was running multiple computers trying to mine crypto, which was literally draining the entire power supply, meaning that people had no heating. And this wouldn't be the first case of people being fucked over due to someone in the general area mining crypto. It's become so bad that New York are even in the swing of currently considering banning crypto mining in the state of New York, which is kind of crazy. And because so much power is being consumed, because so many different computers are operating at one time in order to mine crypto, it means that inevitably the fossil fuels that are being burnt in order to generate this power are all the more. So yeah, it is very detrimental to the environment. I don't mean to be a Greenpeace guy right here, but seriously, it is a real thing. And it's not just Square Enix, like other video game companies have shown interest towards it, like Konami, as well as even Sega, saying that it's the future of gaming. Yeah, NFTs really revolve around this whole scheme of the rich get richer, and anyone that tends to invest usually gets completely fucked over. NFTs are at a point where really the only people that are going to benefit from this are people that are already filthy rich as it is. And because of the fact that Square Enix is so successful in the microtransaction gacha side of things anyway, I don't see it necessary to have both that as well as the whole NFT thing running at the same time. It really goes to show that obviously this company likes money, like any company, but I feel like there's a certain amount of greed that you should have for one corporation. So it goes to show that, yeah, they're trying to tap into every single money-making scheme that is known. So in the financial report, they talk a little bit more about this NFT blockchain crypto idea that the company is going to be diving into and investing money into. They talk about how they're looking at launching a new NFT brand as well as IP, so a game that essentially revolves around the NFT space, as well as establishing their own tokens to use cryptocurrency. So yeah, it's going to involve the use of cryptocurrency as well as tokens that can be on-traded, that will hold value and increase in price, sort of like a stock. For those of you guys who know about NFTs, you're going to know exactly what I'm saying here. They're talking about how they're going to be investing in companies that specifically have expertise towards blockchain games as well as metaverse type stuff. So Animoca brands as well as the Sandbox, they will be investing in order to grow this area of the company. I think what is good though is recently Square Enix ended up selling off their Western game divisions, Crystal Dynamics as well as Eidos, the guys that are known for Deus Ex, Hitman, Tomb Raider, and of course all the IPs that these companies own. These companies were sold over to the Embracer Group, who have previously been known as THQ Nordic, for a deal of $300 million, which is incredibly cheap when you look at the catalog of IPs that Embracer end up obtaining. You know, we've got stuff like Thief, we've got stuff like Tomb Raider, Hitman, there's Legacy of Kain, there's also Gex. I feel like Square Enix didn't really utilize the catalog that were at their disposal enough right there, specifically when looking towards like Legacy of Kain. This is something that like people have been screaming to make a comeback, as well for like myself and the cult following Gex. They really should have done something like that. So in this case, Embracer Group have really benefited here from that really good deal of $300 million. But it was mentioned in that financial results call that the $300 million that Square Enix have obtained through this deal will not be used to be invested into their blockchain sector. So that's at least good. It's not like Crystal Dynamics as well as Eidos have been sold off in order for Square Enix to have a little bit of a nest egg there to sacrifice them to make steps towards blockchain and NFT nonsense. I think it's a bit of a kick in the teeth though for those Western studios, because for one, like I do feel like Square Enix didn't utilize the IPs and catalogs that came along with Crystal Dynamics and Eidos all that much, like when looking at Thief as well as you know, Legacy of Kain or Gex. But even when looking at the games that they ended up releasing through these studios, Square Enix would always say that specifically when looking at Tomb Raider or like Hitman, sales expectations were not met, yet sales were pretty high up there in the millions. Obviously, Tomb Raider 1 is the best selling Tomb Raider game of all time, the one that was under Square Enix, selling a total of like 14 million, yet the expectations were not met, I'm assuming in its first initial wave of sales, but yet still they were fine. So I don't understand, like, What's your expectations, bro? 1 billion sales? I think the big thing that people are worried about right now is because Square Enix are very serious about this, is that this whole crypto thing is going to start being incorporated into their already established IPs, especially online ones. So I know a lot of people, when looking towards Final Fantasy XIV, are a little bit worried about this and how there could be like exclusive items or different services in the game that could be locked behind certain crypto paywalls, and that those prices over time, due to the fact that these NFTs and crypto kind of act like a stock market of sorts, will only increase to a point where people just are unable to access certain content because it's just that fucking expensive, and the company wants to earn surplus amounts of cash. So the best way of doing so is enticing someone behind what is literally a few pixels. Because when we look at this, it's like the way that I think Square Enix would utilize a system like this is to have certain items and stuff that would be a particular value. So for instance, that, I don't know, t-shirt that your character is wearing could be an NFT. It could be one of a kind, could be 100 of them or whatever, but it retains a certain value. And of course, as that NFT is passed around and sold off, of course, the company is going to receive a cut of the real world money that you are essentially sinking into the game. They'll receive some kind of commission or cut from that. But it has been mentioned from Yoshida in the past that he doesn't want any involvement of the NFT thing, crypto thing. And while, yeah, that comment does stand, it's not exactly up to Yoshi P as to what gets incorporated into Final Fantasy XIV in the ways of new systems like that. If the big heads up at Square Enix want something like NFT involvement into Final Fantasy XIV, it's going to happen regardless of what Yoshida says. Of course, Yoshida can make up his own mind as to whether or not he wants to continue working at the Square Enix company, so I don't think it would be worth the risk of losing a valuable asset like Yoshi P over the sake of throwing in crypto and NFT into 14. Yoshi is the single reason, as well as his team, as to why Final Fantasy XIV has become so damn successful. I don't think we have to worry too much about this NFT crypto thing being involved into already established Square Enix IPs. I think there's going to be a test trial run at first. They've already mentioned here in this report that they're going to start brand new IPs and brands that will involve this whole thing, and I think that will serve as the trial run and to see exactly what the reception is like. I think it's stupid though that we're even at a point where Square Enix is like, yeah, we're going ahead with this. I mean, when they first announced their interest last year towards this whole idea, the reception was like black and white on the internet, that no, this is like not a good idea. Whenever a company starts getting involved in this crypto space, it turns a lot of people off. The thing to keep in mind though is what we're seeing here on the internet, whether it be like YouTube or Twitter or certain forums, is that it doesn't necessarily speak for you know, all of the consumers. It's not like we are the majority. So it would seem we are the majority. We're certainly not the majority. So I think this is a sort of thing that like only time will tell if this turns out to be successful, even though there is surplus amounts of internet feedback towards negative takes on Square Enix's business ventures towards the NFT thing, but yet they're still pumping money. They're gonna go ahead with it regardless. It's ironic though, because as I was talking about, the NFT crypto market has kind of crashed a little bit recently, and the interest towards it kind of stoops more and more and more and more. With that 92% crash, that's pretty massive. It happened around the exact same time that Square Enix ended up selling off Crystal Dynamics as well as Eidos to venture out and pursue more crypto stuff. So it's sort of ironic timing in that sense, but this is the type of thing that only time will tell. Crossing our fingers that, of course, this doesn't turn out to be a success for Square Enix, and then they just stick to what they know. I think the microtransaction thing and the gacha thing that they're doing is more than enough. They really don't have to be tapping into yet another currency venture. Now, the last thing that I want to talk about in today's video is something else that came out of this report that I find just incredibly like, my god, Square Enix, like what is actually going on, is to do with Balan Wonderworld. Now, Balan Wonderworld was a 3D platformer that Square Enix ended up releasing last year, and it didn't do too well. In fact, it's one of Square Enix's lowest rated games of all time. The director behind this is Yuji Naka, known for Sonic as well as Knights. He's got an alright track record and is pretty beloved. He's got quite the cult following, and when people found out that Yuji Naka was the one that was behind Balan Wonderworld, then there was a lot of anticipation and a lot of hype behind this, especially a new 3D platformer coming from Square Enix. We were crossing our fingers this was going to turn out good, and it was a complete and utter disaster. What has recently come out about a few weeks back is that Yuji Naka was kicked out of the director seat about half a year before the launch of Balan Wonderworld. This is something that, like, no one knew about up until recently. There were a few reasons as to why this happened apparently, but the core of it is that there were quite a few different disagreements between Yuji Naka and Square Enix towards the development of Balan Wonderworld. Stuff to do with wanting to use certain pieces of music that Square Enix didn't agree with, and that this caused like some kind of tension between the company, on top of Yuji wanting to spend more time developing Balan Wonderworld, but there was a set deadline and that the game had to be finished and shipped, and even if it wasn't by that date, it was going to anyway, which ended up happening. Yuji Naka recently came out talking about this whole thing and that he's currently in a lawsuit with Square Enix. He literally took Square Enix to court over this entire situation, and that he goes on to mention within these tweets, now that he's finally able to talk, because he's obviously not under NDA or anything anymore, that yeah, Balan Wonderworld is severely and heavily unfinished, and that he is ashamed of the product that was released. It's a pretty sad situation because there's a lot of tweets here, and I'm not going to go through all of them, but like within this whole thread, you can really tell that Yuji Naka was disappointed with the way that Square Enix ended up handling the development of Balan Wonderworld, and that he wanted it to be so much more. He even went as far to like call out Square Enix, going on about like how they do not care about games or their fans, screaming this whole idea that Square Enix are absolutely money orientated and nothing more. I'm here to say that like I agree with certain things when looking towards this money orientated mentality that Square Enix have. I mean, absolutely, they are a massive corporation. Corporations love money. I think in certain areas of Square Enix, they most certainly do care about their fans, but then there are areas right there where it certainly seems like the money takes the prioritization. But what gets you like absolutely cringing hard out about this, which I guess sort of backs up the comment that Yuji ended up making, was out of this recent report, Square Enix mentioned that Balan Wonderworld is a game that we recommend with confidence. Now, this is their words exactly, recommend with confidence. Now, look, I don't have any personal experience with Balan Wonderworld. I recently picked it up because I do plan on streaming it, specifically because I have heard how bad it is. I really want to know how bad it is. I ended up getting this bad boy for $9. Now, you don't find many brand new games that are $9 these days. There is obviously a reason why this is $9. When I actually went to go out and buy this, I took it up to the counter and the person was like, oh my god, $9? Like, why is this $9? I'm like, it's apparently terrible. He's like, oh, okay. There's a reason why games get marked down to a low cost of $9, and that's because they're simply not good. So it's absolutely cringeworthy that in a situation like this, Square Enix are pretty much being like severely ignorant, This game was not good. It didn't perform well. That much is obvious. I think everyone can agree that Balan Wonderworld was a complete flop. This price tag screams that it was a complete flop. So that right there, guys, is your Square Enix scoop. Please do not take this as me trying to, shit on Square Enix or step on Square Enix at all. Again, they make some absolutely fantastic games, and a lot of their staff are amazing human beings. A lot of their directors, art designers, animators, developers. It's just when it comes to the higher-ups, they are certainly making some questionable decisions, specifically when looking towards the stuff that was going on with Balan, as well as the frowned upon NFT thing. But again, towards that, only time will tell how successful it is. I am betting on it that it will be a flop, but who knows? Let me know your guys' thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below. However, guys, I'm Cynical. Hopefully you're having a fantastic day, and I'll see you guys real soon. Peace.